going to just take a few moments. I'll keep you updated. Yes. Okay, so we are live. Thank you, first of all, gentlemen, for joining us on this program on the platform we call the Gray Lounge. This is our fourth episode in total, and third episode going live from UK, Australia, Pakistan, and now welcoming Mr. Schilling from Germany, or Deutschland, I should say. And since these programs have been basically the concept of this program is to not only highlight the projects and the programs that Mr. Will Marcus has so far enlightened us with for various activities from poverty alleviation, rather elimination, to agroforestry and town planning. But today, having the presence of Mr. Schilling, we would want to recap on our first episode where Mr. Will Marcus mentioned the project in Philippines. And from here, I would say, Mr. Raza, and please take it from here, and so that you can introduce everybody officially, formally, sure, and we initiate the process.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Zubi. Firstly, a warm welcome to both Mushin and Will for joining us and taking time out of their valuable time out of their schedules to be on this program. Absolutely delighted to have both of them on. I know how difficult it is to get one of them, but having both of them on is really a bonus. These programs are really catching on. They're going international. We have audiences here in the UK. I know that we have friends listening in from Dubai as well, and certainly all over Pakistan and the Far East as well now. So truly international program. And here we are, you know, the technology. I'm in the UK, Will out in Australia, Mushin in Germany, and of course Zubi out in Pakistan. So, you know, it just amazes me, the technology and how quickly the technology is improving all over. So what we'll do today is recap on some of the programs that we've done previously, in particular, because there has been some widespread interest in the project out in the Philippines. So if I could ask Will to recap and give us a synopsis of the program, and then we'll introduce our famous and guest, Mr. Mushin Schilling, who's joining us from Berlin today. And Mushin is the architect, designer of the Jala finance project, which we have been talking about previously. And he'll enlighten us on the Jala project. So, Will, if I could pass you over to yourself, and then after that, if you could give us an introduction to Mushin in detail, and then go on to your program, because I think you are probably more appropriately fitting for you to introduce Mushin than myself.
Thanks, Raza. Thanks, Zubi. Yeah, yes. I think I know Mushin well enough to do an intro. What do you think, Mushin? We've become friends over the years, and we're bonded by our joint interest in helping people in abject poverty, and so we've gone through a bit of thick and thin, you might say, which is always quite a bonding experience. But what I'll probably do is I'll introduce Mushin by way of a story, the story of Piatus, and so everyone will get a better understanding of who he is through that process. If you're okay with that, Mushin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I should start by just doing a recap generally on Piatus and what it is, what this project is. Well, it doesn't feel right calling it a project. It's an initiative. So Payatas is a suburb of Metro Manila. Metro Manila is one of the larger cities on the planet. Depending on whether it's official or not, the population sits somewhere around about 27 to 40 million people. Many people in Metro Manila are not registered because they don't have birth certificates, which is one of the problems that Jala deals with, that people who don't have birth certificates don't have identity, and if they don't have identity, the banks don't want to talk to them about lending them money because they're not really there. So I think the technical name is that they're unbanked, and so we'll use that term a bit. Unbanked people just don't have identity. The truth of the matter is that about 40% of the planet, would I be right in saying that, Mushin, don't have identity? Yeah, it's a big problem.
60,
you know?
actually, 60%. I was thinking you said 40 don't have, but yeah.
60%. Yeah, well, so of course, identifying who people are is an interesting aspect, and Mushin will talk about that. But Jala, in the first instance, creates identity for people in a very ingenious way, in a very solid way. In fact, I would trust the Jala identification system more than a passport these days, or a birth certificate, which can be easily forged. The Jala system proves itself over and over again in the cloud. But let me go back to Payatas. This is a suburb, and I guess it's an older suburb. Older, yeah. It's based around the Payatas dump is where, for many years, Metro Manila used to place all its rubbish in a big, well, it was a valley. They filled the valley and then they made a mountain out of it. And so it's one of the places that Metro Manila place its rubbish that it can't recycle. And so the community around the waste dump, and this is a pretty big waste dump. It's about 1.8 kilometres long and about 300 metres to 500 metres wide. And now that the valley is full and it's mounded, we're estimating that the depth of it from top to bottom is about 300 metres. It's quite a significant pile of rubbish. Mm. But what's happened is that there's people called rag pickers, it's a generic name, would work their way through the dump, picking out rubbish and items that could be upcycled or recycled or eaten. And they were turning them into cash or using them for other purposes. And so it supported a community, a greater community of about 250,000 people, we understand. About a quarter or a fifth of them directly involved in actually walking the tip and pulling out rubbish. And if it's plastic, selling it, or metal, selling it, or glass, selling it, recycling it. Or if it's computer parts, recycling them, cleaning them, and reusing them. And if it's food, of course, for eating. But what happened in this particular community of Payatas? So Payatas is central to, not in the centre of Metro Manila, of course, but it's part of the super city. And
is it a municipal dump? Is the government bringing all the refuge and all the rubbish and just dumping it there, or is it individuals? Or
yeah, so it's a very organised system. There's a corporation that won the contract for picking up the rubbish, and I guess they're responsible for about 70% of all the municipal waste that comes out of Metro Manila goes through their hands. And what they do, they get paid by the ton for the waste that they store in this place. So as the trucks come in, they weigh them on a scale and they dump the material, and that's part of the pay system. Yeah. And so the system for waste collection in Metro Manila is pretty straightforward. There are contractors who own 10 or 15 ton trucks. And they employ or engage with half a dozen young men, usually, who hang off the back of the truck. And as the truck drives around, they grab the bins and they sling it into the back of the truck. While they're doing that, there seems to be a symbiotic relationship with some of them, where anything they can salvage off the top for recycling can be theirs. I don't know what the financial arrangements are between the truck driver and the scavengers, but there must be one of some sort. So the process of recycling and upcycling occurs as soon as the rubbish is picked up from the front of someone's place or premises. And so these trucks wind their way up the mountain to Paiatas. Well, they don't do it now, but I'll come to that. And they dump the rubbish. And so by the time the rubbish gets to the dump, we would estimate 10 to 20% of the items that could be recycled have been taken already, and what's left just goes straight into the waste. Okay, so about 3 years ago now, I think, or maybe 3.5 years ago, there was an avalanche of rubbish. The rag pickers had undermined the mountain of rubbish, and there aren't any real figures on this, because don't forget, everyone is none of these people have identity, so you can't really check them off whether they're dead or not. But anecdotally, we believe that in excess of 1,000 people died in the avalanche of rubbish, came down on top of them. And that was in part because it was so overfull that the steepness of the embankments of mounted rubbish were just too dangerous. It took the government about another 6 months, but they shut it down, and so they stopped dumping rubbish there. And then they, in their terms, remediated the site by putting a 3-metre layer of soil on top of the rubbish and planting trees in it. So that effectively cut off the income for this community. So you've got to understand that 50,000 people are scavenging and generating an income to support a family, and that family is then buying things with the money that they create from the rubbish. They're supporting secondary industries, everything from dry goods stores to clothes, all the little stores and services, taxi drivers, you name it, everyone. So pretty well most of that community was reliant on the income coming off the scavenging from the tip. And then what happened was that it took people a while to work out. There was a bit of shock going on, but if you lose your only form of income, and none of this was researched properly, but we did witness an exodus from Paiatas to the new site, which was a 10-minute drive up the road. And when I mean exodus, it was literally at least thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people with their little wagons and their carts and everything, just in a line, marching with all their worldly possessions up to this new place so that they could be positioned near the new tip to do the same thing again. Yeah, so
I guess these people actually resided near to it as well, so the resident status would have been close to the site, apart from the working element.
Well, they were all squatting, we say here in Australia. That was an informal settlement. No one owned the property.
Yeah.
They'd been there for 15 years doing their thing, but there was no land ownership. So about a third of them physically moved to the new site, so that they rescued themselves. Another third took out microloans with loan sharks. I've got to be very careful what I say here, because these are dangerous people. I don't want to finger anyone. But they were lending people small funds, for us. Let's put it into context. Mushin, about up to $500 US. That would be about the amount, I think, 100 to 500.
What they what they gave we are up to 10,000 pesos, which is actually 1,000, something like that.
About $1,000. So the but the rates were phenomenal. They varied from 40% compounding interest to 120% compounding interest. Impossible for people to pay back. But they called the loans, and I won't name them specifically, but that they were 5/6s, they call them. So you borrowed 5,000 and you gave them back 6,000 in 2 months. Okay, so that's 20% times 6, that's your 120, right? And the deal was that you could buy yourself, say, a rice cooker for that, start a little stall, make rice cakes and sell them. And then if you sold this many rice cakes, you'd be able to pay them back in 2 months. Easy, like this. And so they were sold on that sort of economy. Of course, these people aren't, they're industrious, they're hardworking, they're honest, but they're not schooled and they don't know they don't know what interest is, let alone the difference between simple and compounding interest. And so they just were trusting and they went into these loans. And it was at about this time that I was introduced to Mushin by a mutual friend of ours, Christine McDougall, or Dr. Christine McDougall. And she thought that we ought to get together, and she was dead right. And so I got onto the phone to say hello to Mushin and ask him what he was doing. And at the time, you had been investigating the Grameen loans out of India. Mushin, I think you were fairly upset, or maybe not upset, but you were a bit appalled, let's say, at how they'd changed, that they were 8% compounding interest now, I think, on the loans. And it just wasn't what it used to be when it started, which was a very good idea. And you thought, well, someone needs to do something about that, and I'm going to do it. So you'd started off on that journey in parallel to me, sort of investigating Piatis. And so Mushin was putting together a microloan facility, and at the time it was based on was it Holochain or
Holochain, yes.
I think it was Holochain, and you were looking at either impact investors using cryptocurrencies to feed into the system, so that you could create funds to for people who were unbanked at the time. So and as I was introduced to Piatis by a mutual friend of ours, who's now a mutual friend of ours, our brother Joe Dean Solar, who has been working a mission for a quarter of a century in Metro Manila, looking after street children, and then that led to rehousing the children back with their original families often, and then half the problem was usually poverty, so they got into poverty alleviation measures as well by default, because they're looking after street children. 4 million street children in the Philippines. It's no small problem. And these guys used to feed them, wash them, bathe them, do their medical, do their dental, make sure they're okay, find their parents, introduce them back to God, get the drug dealers and the pimps off their backs. It's very dire sort of life these kids were having. And so this gentleman runs a mission there called the He Cares mission. Very brilliant mission. It won the World Vision, or a big NGO. World Vision gave them the title of the world's best charity about 3 years ago. That's no small thing. And I can vouch for these guys. They're good, and they do a lot of effort with they do a lot with very little. So Joe Dean and Mushin and I sort of became a bit of a trio, tripod. Joe Dean on the ground dealing with people, me master planning, and Mushin coming up with scathingly brilliant ways to find money to make it all happen. And so I got invested into the Piatis problem first because Joe Dean showed me, and we were already doing work in another area for them, and he said, I really think you should have a look at this. And he showed me what was going on, and it was heartbreaking. And the people who had the loans, and this is probably the worst part of it, this is really what sort of pushed me over the edge to get me mobilized into this. The people who are in the loans who didn't pay back their loans, oh, they were threatened and bullied, and you know, they found the money, they borrowed again, so they were triangulating their loans. They're doing lots of stupid things. Then if they failed again, it got to the point where they were offered by the loan sharks to either sell their daughter into prostitution or have their son become a drug runner for them. So these are not good people, obviously, the loan sharks. But the people in Pleiatas are good people. They're all very, you know, religious, and they try to do the right thing, and they're honest as the day is long. It's really quite remarkable. And then if they failed to agree to that, they would suggest maybe that their children sell organs to them. You know, like your son has two kidneys. You let us have one, and we'll write off the debt. So they'll write. That's a $25,000 organ being exchanged for $500. You know, it's very criminal. And if they didn't do that, then, and this is what was happening when I was there, these loan sharks were abducting the children, harvesting all their organs and throwing the empty bodies back into the village. Dire stuff, really not good. And there were 6 children that it happened to in the month before I turned up there, and that was November 2018, I think, from memory. And that just motivated me to do something about it, because that just can't happen, that sort of stuff. And so I started trying to come up with a plan to lift these people out of poverty without moving them, because the ones who weren't moving, I wasn't going to move them, not even with a very big lever. That was home. You know, they'd made their dwellings on the spot. So we came up with a few plans, and this is where the food cube came from in the initial. That's the original. That's the initiator for the food cube, and the vertical villages started to come out of that as well. And then we're searching around for finance and for the whole thing. And at this time we were talking to the person who owned all of the contracts with the government to take the rubbish. Not that he was party to any of this, but he had lots of money, and he could understand the problem. And this is Mr. Santiago, a brilliant man, and as it turned out, and he was willing to put a percentage of his profit back into what we were doing to make it happen. But at this time, I went, after I'd spoken to Mushin maybe once or twice, and I found out what he was doing. I invited him to come and see what we were doing, have a look at the problem, and see if he could use Pleiatas as a pilot. You know, maybe launch Jala there, because Jala at the time was under development. And so immediately Mushin said, yes, I'm going to fly. At the time, Mushin was living in just near Bangkok in Thailand. And he got on a plane, and we met in, where did we meet? In the plane, didn't we? We both boarded, we arranged to be on the same plane, and we where was the plane from? Gee whiz, now I forget. Was it China?
It was
somewhere in China.
No. It was Philippine Airlines, or I think it was Philippine Airlines going to
Manila.
No,
But
we met in the airplane. We met in the small airplane flying to what is it called? Zagreb city? Zagreb? No. What's the name called?
Yeah. Now I remember. Yeah. Okay. We met. Yeah. Anyway, nonsense for everyone else, but we're just reminiscing here. So we sat on the airplane together and spoke, got to know each other. And then over a period of about 10 days, I think, we were sort of traveling together and talking constantly about the situation. And Mushin and Joe Dean was showing us the issues with the poverty on the ground. Mushin came to the conclusion that that Jala was suitable, but and in the first instance, it would be a suitable replacement for these loan sharks, these small loans. And because Jala can operate at about 5 to 6% simple interest, which is a far cry from 40 to 120% compounding interest. And so we had to then work out a way where we wouldn't have a target on our back by stealing all the business off the loan sharks. And Mushin came up with a very elegant way of doing that. And I won't go into the detail of that. Mushin, maybe you shouldn't either. Otherwise, we might show our hand, our cards. But and then we kept doing this, and it was very clear that housing was a big issue. Inappropriate housing was actually causing the poverty cycle to a great degree. I mean, there's lots of moving parts with poverty, but inappropriate housing was a very neat way to intervene and to bring about a solution. But it was very clear to everyone that with the amount of poverty we were talking about, and this is just in Metro Manila or the Philippines, if you want to get broader, no one could afford to rehouse all of them. And anyway, when they did do it, it was sporadic. The government would do poverty housing, low-cost housing estates, and they might put in 200 houses that were tiny. They were literally one room, 25 square metre, 5 metre by 5 metre, or the bigger ones were like 30 square metres, with a kitchen in one corner, a little toilet in one, and the rest was open space for dining, sleeping, and just living. One door, one window, and not very appropriate for the climate or for families of 7, which seemed to be the norm generally. And they wouldn't do enough. It was just really lip service to the fact that this poverty existed, and the government might be doing something about it, but they weren't resolving it in any sense. And so it became very clear to me very quickly that the only way for this to occur was if the people in poverty could buy their way out of their situation. And I started doing a few sort of basic maths. I understood their economy in a very high level sense, not in any detail. But then I came to Mushin. I don't know if this was the second trip, Mushin, you came, or the first one, but I just said, really what we need to do is we need to get Jala and make it so that people in poverty can buy a small house, like a 50 square metre house is big enough for 3 bedrooms, right? And Mushin had a good think about this, and I think the conclusion went something like, well, we don't want this to gallop, and people who can afford normal finance, they can't take advantage of something we're setting up specifically for people in poverty. And so, the definition of Jala changed a bit at that time from being a microloan facility to being a facility that would allow unbanked people to raise themselves up. And that would include buying a family home. And so the focus of Jala is very specifically for people in poverty, though it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But at the moment, given the need in areas like Metro Manila, it's essential that someone does something urgently about it. Given the great heart that Mushin has in terms of dealing with these issues, and I mean both in the sense that he cares very much about the condition of the people that the people are currently in, but also that he has the capacity to keep going to drive these things through. So I essentially take my hat off to you, Mushin, because without you, a lot of this won't happen. The mechanism for driving poverty into the ground is very much in Jala's hands.
Yeah, guys, absolute admiration for you guys to be on the front line, actually going to these places and dealing with these matters, because it's just not easy to be doing that. You know, to actually witness the level of poverty and the cruelty that goes on in these sites. It's just admiration to you guys that, you know, you put all this together and you actually go to these places and see it firsthand and deal with it firsthand, because it's just not easy. These sites, I can only imagine, you know, the illnesses, the complications, just, you know, for anybody to go there, and, you know, you go there. And I know that from time to time you become ill, Will, you know, from there. So absolute admiration for that. On that.
Not just me, Raza. Mushin got dengue fever at exactly the same I did, and probably from the same mosquito, from what we can work out. So we both went down in unison at that time. But you know, this is the problem about poverty. The people are living in poor conditions because they have no money, so they squat on land that no one cares about, which in this, you know, Metro Manila is on a delta, really, and so there's lots of little streams and rivers leading down to Manila Bay, and every time there's a monsoon, they flood. And so these waterways are not like streams and creeks, they're canaled to get rid of the stormwater as fast as possible so it doesn't impact the city. And these people are living in these canals. So I think there's 22 hurricanes a year in that area. Am I getting this right? Or 20, something like that. So 20 times a year, the water level rises up above their floor, and at least one of them is up above their ceiling. And so this, you know, their solution is to put a second floor on so that they can put all the worldly goods on the next floor. And even that from time to time goes under because, you know, storms get bigger and bigger. So, and can you imagine if your house was flooded, you know, twice a month? It'd be damp, it'd be smelly. Really, you know, and these aren't well-built things, you know, they're sort of cinder blocks and bits of tin and, you know, bits of wood that they find in the dump, and the grounds are either rammed earth or I don't think I saw much concrete. And they use rags for doors, and the doors are falling off the hinges, and they don't do windows because they're expensive, and so they're dark inside. And there's no sanitation, and there's no stormwater control. So, you know, eventually what happens is cockroaches and rats and all sorts of mosquitoes, disease-carrying vermin are getting around, and they're infecting everyone. And so people are sick all the time. And the average life expectancy in these places is 37 years. And so it's dire, and it can be fixed. And this is what we've spoken about before. And the fix always involves, well, who's paying for that? So I don't know. Mushin, by way of an extended introduction, do you want to take over and a little bit more about Jala and how you see?
Before Mushin comes in, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Mushin and Zubi have had interaction previously with regards to Pakistan. So between themselves, they were, before even we introduced, and it came as a surprise to me when I mentioned Mushin's name to Zubi. And he said, well, I know him, I've heard of him, we've met, or not met, but we've had some interaction before. So familiar to each other there.
That's great.
All right. Thank you, Will, and thank you, Raza and Xaryab, and for inviting me to talk a bit about Jala. Yes, it started out differently. It didn't start out as a microloan system or either. It started with my fascination with the blockchain and the possibility of using a verifiable internet. You know, the internet now, even with HTTPS, is an open system, um, where everybody can log in and nothing is verified, basically. The verifiable exchange of things. So along comes the blockchain and Bitcoin most prominently. And so I was fascinated by that, especially the making everything verifiable and identifiable. So that is one part. And the other part that after a while, after I started to understand how that ecosystem of cryptocurrency functions and works, I was fascinated by the way that would allow us to raise funds in novel ways and use that. So then through the contact with Will, I realized, I'm 67 now, so I realized, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And then along comes Will, and then I figure, yeah, let's eliminate poverty. It's like that. Yeah, okay, let's do it, right? So, I mean, we actually, um, to put it in a grand picture, the money is out there. And I know of tons and tons and tons of money looking for good opportunities to flourish and to make some little bit more money. So, I mean, there's so much out there. And most, especially in the volatile economics we have now, people are looking for reliable places. And actually, the pension funds in Europe, they are huge and they have all these rules for reliable funding of things. So um, after a while, after Will and I had been speaking, and I've been seeing, I mean, Joe Dean really likes to do the full immersion, so he took me to one of the most, I don't know how to say this, but one of the most interesting slums I have ever seen, which was underneath a high rise. So there was something like what is it, 200, 300 people living in the cellars of a high rise, basically, near to the river, getting flooded, etc. Anyway, so um, one of the things I knew about poverty before was that people invest tons of energy and innovation into staying alive, basically surviving. So I always saw poor people as entrepreneurs without credit. So they're entrepreneurial. I mean, what was describing about the dump basically shows how that works. They find something to sell, something to do, something to make money with, which is makes COVID all the more tragic. I mean, I would say the poverty rate will have doubled in the last 2 years, and the hunger rate will have tripled probably. But anyway, so um, so that was the point where we were, and then um, I didn't want to do microfinancing. But then once I started to look into microfinance, I saw Yunus, the guy that created Grameen, the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. He's like celebrated as a famous
Yeah.
innovator of microfinance. And um, that their interest of the Grameen Bank, the interest rate for the smallest types of loan is 25%. And that's not because Yunus is such a bad man, but it is because it costs so much. The lower the loan, the higher the cost of the bank. So he has a beautiful. So his innovation was really putting people together, especially women, and then making a loan to five or more women. So that was like his biggest innovation from my point of view, my personal point of view. Um, then, So we have the poverty, we have a new means like Bitcoin that would allow us to potentially tackle the problem with a vehicle to give people loans who are in poverty. And so then, I mean, the major problem, Will spoke about it, is really identity. So the identity problem is really, I think there's like the World Health Organization has a term for it. 60% of the world's people are not identifiable. And then of those 60%, then 80, 90% of those people are also unbanked, what they call unbanked. Basically, nobody really wants to give them a loan. Basically, that's it.
Just to clarify, guys, the unbanked, we are talking about people that do not have bank accounts, essentially, or are not in the banking system.
Yes, and the major problem for most of us, it's like a problem that wasn't even on my horizon previously, previous to really looking into it. It wasn't even on my horizon that, um, I took it for granted to have an ID. And you need an ID to get a loan, except the loan sharks will accept you without an ID. They just see you, they've got your mug, and then if you don't pay, that mug won't look so nice anymore. So, basically, when Will and I went to Pilatus one time and talked with around 40 people who had a loan through loan sharks. One of the most amazing things, there was two, basically, there's the high interest rate, the compound interest rate, and them not understanding any of that. They just know, oh, it's Bombay 5-6, meaning basically I get 5, I pay back 6 pesos, whatever it is, 1,000, whatever, right? So, and within a short time. That's all they know. And they're actually really thankful because these are the loan sharks are the only people that give them a loan with no ID and an easy way to make the down payment because they just come by their home on a motorcycle and pick up the money, right? So you don't have so it's a very informal infrastructure which fits very well with slums and the informal what they call the informal economy. Now the informal economy is something like 65% of the world's economy. Most people don't know that, but that's the informal economy. And informal mean basically, when people here talk about it, they talk about black money and people cheating taxes and so on. No, the informal economy is mostly people who don't have much money and who don't appear on the radar of financial statistics institutions, blah, blah, blah. But that it's 60% was a shock to me. I thought, whoa. So the real economy is like 40%, and the informal economy is like 60%. Something must be totally wrong in our way of doing and counting. So, which brings me to the next part of what Jala is about. So, we know we have an ID problem, so we need to solve that, and um, and we have a problem of providing the right type of money to the right kind of people with the right process. Now, the microfinance process to get people a loan is complicated and bureaucratic, which is what makes it so expensive, which takes so people need to pay 25%, even with good willing Yunus Grameen Bank. So, so it's not like there's evil. So it is you're using old school tech for a problem that's been there forever. Um, but we can solve this with new tech. So what Jala really is about is it's an accounting system. People go, oh, it's that simple. Yeah, it's an accounting system. Money that comes in appears as a plus, and money that goes out appears as a minus. We all know that from bookkeeping, right? So the why everybody is so much about Bitcoin is that it makes it anonymous and verifiable all over the world. So that's the basic thing. It makes it anonymous, which is like normal money works. I give it to you. We don't look at fingerprints and all of those things. That money is untraceable. So that kind of shifts around untraceably. So Bitcoin solved that for the digital realm. But they produced a problem, which is the problem of the internet per se. The problem of the internet per se is that it's not decentralized in the software. It is decentralized in the hardware. It's running on computers all over the world, which are interconnected and networked. But the algorithm and the databases are centralized. And that is like the main problem, right? So, if you have a centralized database, I put a bunch of hackers into it, and then North Korea can fund its nuclear program, right? So you use hackers to attack a system. So, so the Bitcoin verifiability is novel and great and makes it actually kind of potentially easy to exchange. I mean, I won't go into the technical details. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it makes it kind of easy to exchange anonymously. So then this brings me to the main problem of Bitcoin and that whole way of thinking is it's still they have one central ledger. So if you buy a beer with a Bitcoin, it basically lands in this one ledger, the universal ledger on the whole world. That's why you have this energy problem that people keep talking about, because your beer goes into that ledger. Otherwise, it can't be validated, etc., in all of this. So why this is so is another conversation. But anyway, the basic reason, the basic disease of the internet is that it's decentralized hardware and centralized software, which creates things like Amazon. Basically, because Amazon understood, who cares about having books? That's how they started out. Who cares about having books, having the marketplace for the books internationally, having that, owning the marketplace? That is the thing we want to have. So, and that is the marketplace is basically a centralized database. It's the centralized database that is the problem. And so and that's how things don't work for the poor, because they are like waste. They are like the waste of our industrial system, basically our financial industrial economic system. The poor are the waste of that system because they don't find a way into all these centralized things. So along comes Holo. Now, I know Holo since the people from Holo since the beginning um, of their development. They're still not in beta; they're still in alpha. But basically, it is a system that does away with centralization altogether. Basically, what it does is it puts the data in a secure way. I can go into the details, but not right now. I don't think that's helpful. But it puts your data in a decentralized thing. So my data, as far as those data are needed for an interaction, they just go between mobiles, computers, and holoports, and in a decentralized way, which is basically the way the traffic in the internet goes, is also decentralized because one says to the other, but they always have this package which leads back to the centralized database and makes it vulnerable. So if you have a decentralized database, basically you have fulfilled the promise of the internet, which is what people are now talking about. Web 3.0. Basically, Web 3.0 is if you don't want to buy into big industry movies, basically Web 3.0 is the decentralization of the software and the software sources and the income sources. Now, one of the things why I'm talking about this at such length is identity is the same thing. So your ID is basically saved in some central server, which is why a server leak can cause these things of, oh yeah, oh by the way, you have been pounced, and I have this thing, and then I see that like 30 million email addresses, among them mine, has been grabbed from a not so well secured server somewhere, central server, right? So my name, my email address, and my phone number, right? So, you know, so, uh, and also if you want to rob a bank, you know, if you want to rob a bank nowadays, you don't go with guns blazing inside the bank. You simply go to your server and a hacker, and you attack the centralized database where all the information lies. So do away with that. Do away with that whole system, and you've saved like 40% of the cost. 40, I would even wager, I mean, 60% in the banking sector, it would be 80%. You just throw away all the jobs that people have, and people don't have a job anymore, but they don't need to because nothing is centralized. So you don't have to have all these checks and balances which produce a huge bureaucratic system which costs a lot of money. So basically what Jala is really doing at core is enabling people in poverty to get two things, an ID and a loan. Now, obviously, this is not only for people in poverty. And if you start to think about how such a system would need to work, then obviously it needs to go through to say middle class people and to provide services middle class people. And since I've got involved into the Global Leisure City team, I've started to realize that most of the bureaucratic handlings of accountability in social, economic, whatever sense can be made transparent, decentral, in such a way that you can govern, or that you can almost have a city self-govern for around about 80%. You just need 20% kind of centralized government and rulings and stuff like that. But for 80%, it can rule itself, and you can use the systems of accountability and accounting to do just that. Basically, it revolutionizes the way we can think about governance and economy. Um, the reason for big bureaucratic apparatuses is predict and control. And we need to predict and control because we need to steer the politics. And to be able to steer the politics in another way, you have to totally rethink that. I mean, we have done that for, say, since Mesopotamia, so since round about 3,000-4,000 years, we have been centralizing and doing all these things forever more centralized. And so for people to think what the consequences of decentralization are for an accountability system and an accounting system is pretty fresh. And not much people are interested in thinking about it because it doesn't make you money. In fact, what we are creating is actually a system, a system. Just think that basically in a bank, you give the money bank, the bank your money, you give the bank your money, and the bank uses it for credits and so on and so on, and you take money from the bank, and that's the profit of the bank. And like a German Bert Brecht, famous playwright, once said, you know, who wants to rob a bank if you can own a bank, right? It's much more lucrative. So, what if we give the banking to the poor, which basically means that they use all their money to as a form of credit to each other, and the asset is secured by the community in and of itself. Which brings me how, so it's a roundabout way to go. ID, right? ID, and the way we've done that for not only 4,000 years, but 100,000 years and more, is by saying, yeah, that's my friend Raza. I know Raza. I know he's okay. You know, so we have been verifying each other's identity. And before we used paper, we have been doing that together. So it's like a well-known process, right? So all Jala is doing is recording this process to get a what we internally call a core identity, which is a technical term. It's not an identity in the usual sense. So a technical term. It creates a core identity, which then becomes more and more reputable, basically through the interaction that is being done on that account. So credit rating is inclusive, so that everybody is credit rating everybody else by interacting with credit, giving each other credit, buying from each other with credit, etc. So so it's the people in this case that make the money work for them. So then they profit from it. All Jala does basically is provide the way we can do this and continue innovating in that because I'm continually developing how we can do that better. Um, and yeah, so basically,
do we have an input into where the money is utilized? As in, is it used for some business or entrepreneurial sort of purpose, or is it actually for survival? People buy food, or do we have any input actually into where the funds actually go into?
yeah, yeah, this is the original Yunus data, which can only confirm. If you give $10 to a woman, about $7 will land in the community. If you give $10 to a man, about $3 will end up in the community. Because we seem to be a little bit more keen on status symbols, which is very important. I mean, but these are just interesting data. So the money, where it comes from, basically, one of the things I've realized is you can create the money for the poor by allowing everybody to be creditor. So I can say, well, I have 100 I have €100 extra. So I put up a pair like they do in other decentralized forex systems. You know, I put my $100 in there, and they stand on the opposite of 100 Jala accounting units. So that pair just stays there, and then somebody wants to buy, who has Jala accounting rights, wants to buy, say, dollars, then they use this swapping potential, basically, this same mechanism that is being used in huge finance, etc., um, to evaluate the value of that accounting unit within that community. But they are basically providing credit to the community, which is not really kind of what people usually think happens, right? But anyway, so they are providing credits, and then the people, to give you a very concrete example, there's this woman, Diana, which I happen to know, and um, uh, she gets money every month, and that money goes into investments. She lives in the slums, not Bulakanan, I think it's called. It's not Payatas, but kind of near. Um, and she uses it around 1/3 for consumption, and 2/3 of it she uses for investment. Basically, to get into, I mean, I could go into to the particulars, but she got into a system where she actually becomes the messenger of a bigger company that is providing food for the people, and they have like a program where you buy into that, and so I mean they have an interesting business model. But anyway, so she bought into that, and she said, okay, so that's where she put her investment. Other investments go into things like roofs and stuff like that. You know, remember, Will, when we spontaneously put money together for this older woman to give her a roof. Basically, she was half blind. And so anyway, you know, so it's um, making a system work for the people. Basically, this is where I landed from saying, okay, now if we want to eliminate poverty, all we need to do is give the people who are in poverty a means to um, invest, and some infrastructure and some advice, maybe, etc. You know, so they can invest. Now, Will, so I come onto this large thing because Will wanted Jala to finance housing for the poor, and in the beginning, he said, no way, he can't do that. You know, because A, housing is too expensive, and two, B, nobody's going to give the poor a credit. So Will said, no, Jala should do it. I said, no, can't be done. So, but anyway, you know, we figured out a way. It can be done, um, but it can only be done if you don't take a huge compound interest type of loan. If you just get a loan where the maximum interest is around about 5 to 7%, within that range, depending on factors I can't
I
oversee at
have
this moment.
I have a few questions after having
Yeah.
heard Jala in depth. Firstly, the main question is because as Bill started off the discussions and mentioned the loan sharks being very well connected and to some level even dangerous enough that he was careful mentioning the details about them. So when you get into a place with such unfavorable environment and atmosphere, and you bring about a change which is not just constructive for the market that these scavengers are living on. I mean, the money scavengers, I mean,
Yeah.
and and on top of that, you are eradicating their source of income and giving those people not just identity, but banking them also in the unbanked opposite terms.
You're,
Yes.
Sorry, and uplifting them in a multitude of ways beyond their comprehension and acceptance, and then you are also coming as a competitor in the market, and not just a competitor, but an invader of the market. In a few months or years, you would actually kick them out of the market, and or maybe don't know. The question is being extended, but maybe if I were one of the loan sharks, and if I am smart as I am, I would say, why don't we partner? And instead of you bringing in the cryptocurrency, I've got shitloads of funds. Pardon my French. I've got a lot of money gathered with these sort of things. Now, why don't we become partners? Because frankly speaking, I know it's the question is becoming a bit going haywire, but I know you would get to the root of it, and then you could explain it in detail. That if I were in Pirates and I was selling organs of these people who are unable to pay me their loan, and I'm making 10 times or probably 100 times more than what they owe me by selling their kidneys and livers and whatnot, then all of a sudden Jala comes in, or Will comes in, and Mushin comes in, and I look at them and I'm like, you know what, you're not my enemies. You could actually be my partners, because the way cryptocurrency works, just like you mentioned earlier, that it is verifiable, but to some level there's still a question mark on the transparency of the funds which are being maneuvered in the system of the blockchain, and how for instance, Pakistan does not allow cryptocurrency and these sort of exchange, because black money can be converted into white very easy through this.
Can I have first bite of that? Your business brain is working overtime there. I think there's two things I have to say about this suggested partnership. The first is never, and the second is they're not going to move from 120% compounding interest to 5 to 7% simple interest, and only a portion thereof.
But if you're removing them off the equation, then they would probably think about it.
Yes.
No, thank you. I kind offer denied.
There's two ways to think about this, because as you rightly say, obviously there is an open door to money laundering, and so a scenario is think about where I made, let's say, a million by loan sharking, and now I reinvest this million into the Jala fund and get 5%, but better than nothing, right? So actually,
and also because it's laundered.
They're not wound up like this. They'll move on to the next bunch of suckers. This is the thing. Yeah.
You cannot stop people from using the system, and so if a person has an ID and he is a drug dealer, then he can use our system. Anybody with any kind of interest.
He would not oppose Will, because Will is very strict about it. He would first get cryptocurrency and get into your system the other way around.
Yeah, but you see, the thing it doesn't really matter how that works, because in a decentralized system, this is impossible in principle. Now, we have to stop that in practice. I'm just like Will on the ethical side. I don't want that money, right? But I can't stop that. So here's the thing: is what hardly anybody has ever thought about, and I've not yet read a publication about it. I've talked with a couple of people about this. One of the major difficulties of a decentralized cryptographic system is you don't know what is coming from where and going to where, but you can make it somewhat traceable by saying, well, so this brings me to the topic of taxes, right? So by saying basically to the Pakistan state, if you partner with us, of every transaction, you get, say, we take off 1%, and that's your tax, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. It just matters that your coffers get fat, right? So, which you can use for all your government programs. Now, that's one part of it. And when I was thinking about this possibilities of taxation, I realized that so if I have my wallet and I give you $100, then I pay $1 tax, which goes automatic, but it also tells me that at junction so and so, there was this exchange and the state got $1 from it, right? So we have that, those are data points. Now you can use AI, artificial intelligence, to analyze those data points and do a soft approach of this. So, after a while, we may be starting to think, well, where does all this money on this street corner come from? So we just put a policeman in plain clothes on the opposite side of the street, and they may see if it's legal or illegal. You see, so decentralized, anonymized systems are not black boxes. They can be investigated with artificial intelligence, which is
Okay,
why I've been talking to one of the world leaders in, as I consider world leaders in artificial intelligence. She goes a somewhat different way than Google and Facebook does. But I've discussed this very topic with her, and she said, "Yeah, so we can't, we cannot use the system to identify the person. We could, but we're not going to make this possible. We're going to make that impossible. But we can see times and spaces, and that gives us particular metadata, which our law enforcement system may want to use. So that's that illegal part. I mean, that's always a part people really think about, and I think it's really worth thinking about, because if we're moving away from the old system towards a transaction-based system, a system that is
it's
decentralized
not
and based on
illegal and
transaction,
legitimate.
then we need this. So we're not going to partner with anybody.
I know.
Basically, we're not going to
Basically,
partner, but you can provide the system with liquidity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
people all over the world can become liquidity provided and use that system like the entire world financial system is being used to do that. So the other part of your question was, basically, they could kill us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they could use the ancient means of violence to to threaten us. Now, the beauty of a decentralized system is there is no king, there is no queen, which you could take to dismantle the system. It's the strength of a decentralized system is that it's not centralized.
Yeah,
Mm.
but see the way I see it, when a smart mind starts to partner with those enemies of yours, what they could do, and that could actually be a point for you to note down, because you could then counter it beforehand. See, because it takes me to my other question, which will lead to a strategy that can actually sabotage your system, so you can actually preemptively counter that. My question is, what if these people cannot pay you back the loans, then what is the mechanism behind it? Why am I saying this? It's because they can actually forcefully, let's say I am one of the loan sharks, and I've got 100,000 people who owe me a lot of money, and now what I'm going to threaten them with is that I'm either going to abduct their children or sell their organs or whatever, right? So I've got them under pressure, and I can maneuver them. So what I could do is force them to get loans from your system in a magnitude of some ratio which goes beyond your plan, or beyond your financial plan, that if, God forbid, things are supposed to go down and people cannot pay you back, then this much is the threshold that you've got in your planning, that this is the hit that we can take. Now, if they utilize that and go beyond your threshold and force them not to pay back, your financial system can collapse. So this is more of a maneuver that they can use by means of your beneficiaries, which you cannot say no to, because they're part of your Jala network, and they do not practically exist other than your network alone. So these people can maneuver things to bring your financial model down. So that's my other question. So what's the mechanism of payback?
Well, the thing is, we're basically a community authenticated system. So the community authentication, that's what we call the process of identifying you as person A and saying, okay, that's you, your seed identity is secured, and everything else comes from transaction. Now, there's several ways to counter movements like that. One is you can only be a cash provider to the community as a whole, right? There's never a direct link between providing a loan and receiving a loan. It always goes, providing a loan is you provide a loan to the community. Receiving a loan is you receive a loan from the community. So what does that mean? It basically means that, let's say we start out with a credit limit of €100, and then we move to the next credit level and next credit level. And these movements to the next credit level is simply a meritocracy. Basically, it's a meritocracy. You get good points, you get a good reputation, and you get more power in the system. And so and this coupled with an AI in the background, which shows us patterns we haven't thought of, you know, and you may be like the totally smart person that outwits me and my whole team, right? Let's say that, you know. The point is, since we are not in power and we are not enforcing, we are giving communities this power. So if I'm the baker in Payatas and I want to buy a new oven, right? The loan shark system works in the way described. Our system works like he may need the backing of 100 people in the community saying, yes, he's worth it and he will pay it back. So that there in the Philippines, there's a word for it. It means honor.
I get it.
Honor,
Yeah,
a debt of honor, right?
making one credible.
Right. So we are using basically the ancient system of honor, of community reputation to police that, to self-police, basically. And I'm sure there's smart people out there who can think of scenarios we cannot come up with that are smarter than us and smarter than me and smarter than all the team. But since we are a robust system based on AI and decentralized governance itself, I could go into the governance system that is enabled through an accountability system like that. But anyway, it would work through those types of communal authentication system. And so at the
Absolutely.
very core of Jala is its security system, and its security system is the same community we're working with. I would wager that 90% of the people are honest, decent, honorable
I
people.
believe so.
I
I
would
believe.
wager that in general.
I believe so. It's just that your competitors in the system can maneuver things. This is why I came up
Of
with it.
course.
Now, the other one more thing that I wanted to add. Actually, there are plenty of more things that I noticed during your discussions. So the next thing I would want to add is that you mentioned that the informal economy of the globe, or rather these sort of countries particularly, goes up to 65%.
Yes.
Now, since you're tapping the bigger chunk now through your microfinance banking and Jala. Now you are hitting the 65% niche,
Yes.
which the formal economy does not, which
Yes.
the formal economy cannot tap into, because you have invented a system which is now banking the unbanked and the bigger ratio of people. And you had a very beautiful quotation which I would want to use from here onwards with your permission. You said the poor people are entrepreneurs without credit. That was a beautiful thing to say. Now you are tapping at the mass entrepreneurs of the world, of 65% of ratio. So now you're going to tap into the economy, which is greater economy than the rest of the giants that the greater families are living on. So now you are getting in on top of the food chain, so to speak. So when you do that, how long do you suppose, or do your financial experts calculate that after having the bigger chunk, how long do you think it will take for you to bring down the percentage from this 25 up to 25% down to say 2%, 3%, so that it becomes very, very viable for the greater poor countries and continents like Africa. So, is there a forecast, a financial forecast that your financial experts have made so far that could be more of a what is how would you say it? A positive note to this that could add a positive note to this concept of Jala, that we plan to bring down microfinance interest rates from 25% to 2% in a span of these many years.
Well, I would say it's possible within, I can't say years, I would say reach. Basically, you see, the we're moving towards zero marginal cost in all areas of life, basically. So I think the limit, the fastness of growth, really depends on a couple of things. And you can do, I mean, I've worked through most of the operational stuff. We can make mistakes on the operational front, right? Um, we may have a bug in the system that we didn't see. So you have all these types of things, which, let's say, after 2 years, we've kind of gotten out all of those. Um, I think we will start not with 25, we will start with 7%, just to be safe. I was saying between 5 and 7%. Well, if we do a housing project, we can go with 5%. I've done a rigorous accounting with Will on that topic, and so we can do with 5%, roundabout by that with that. Um, but with the other things, we will start at round about 7%. Um, but what is also what I forgot to mention before is that every community which has the potential to give credits to other communities, they also have an insurance, a mutual insurance. Now, just imagine the insurance system won't ever like us again. But basically, we're creating a seed cell for mutual insurance, which basically means all the people mutually insure each other. And so we will try to find, we will inevitably, through all these things, find ways in which we can do insurance and all of those aspects. So, um, coming back to your question, there is, I would say, um, we can we can go towards 2% within 5 to 7 years.
Would that be dependent on the database? I mean, the user base, or would that be dependent
Yes.
on the more venture capitalists jump into it?
No, the user base, basically, because basically, we are not attractive to a venture capitalist.
I mean,
We
it's
also
sort of
decentralize that. So
microfinance.
you see, we also decentralize that, but
Okay, one more thing I wanted
because
to
it's
add.
self-funding. So okay, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So the self-funding aspect of it is really, really important, which basically means also kind of a knockout to the Peter Thiels of this world, because we're not going to provide huge amounts of money for early investors. We're
I get
actually
it.
going to we actually allow everybody to invest a little of their money into the system and make a little money with that in a safe way.
Okay, one more thing I want to add, which may help the cause that you are working on. See, after listening to, I know there are a lot more details that could not have been discussed in such a small, short time period sitting. And I would want us to, if possible, at your convenience, want us to have in-depth discussions on this whenever possible, however it may be, through a Zoom session or whenever. Now, but from what I've gathered so far, this cause is so beautiful and noble to begin with, that I would keep on suggesting whatever I possibly can to for that you could add to those improvement sides of it. See, now when you bring in investments from a penny to a dollar of whatever amount from whichever part of the world, translated from a digital currency into a practical implementation of a project, be it a housing project or a small medium enterprise establishment of the locals, the beneficiaries. After all, it is now being translated from a digital currency into a practical asset and equity. Now, this is something which even Bitcoin does not have. This is something no cryptocurrency so far has managed to achieve. I mean, frankly speaking, this bubble can burst in a matter of a moment and people would go bankrupt all of a sudden and probably lose their lives in the process. By means of your system, what I have noticed so far during the discussions is that you are practically giving life to the concept of a digital platform. You are in two ways. A, you are establishing a blockchain of your own with those 65% of unmarked, unbanked, unregistered, non-identity people into a certain blockchain of your own under Jala, which nobody even tapped before because it did not practically exist on the map. So you've got a bigger blockchain in the future. I can foresee a bigger blockchain, a parallel blockchain, but you are at the moment dependent on a current system of blockchain with a current prevalent cryptocurrency or a digital currency. What if you add within your blockchain a currency of your own instead of, I mean, let's say it is coming through gold or silver or crypto or cash, and when it enters your blockchain, it goes into a Jala coin of some sort, right? Now this Jala coin would not only validate, not only validate the concept of digital translating into practical equity and asset, but it would also, in the long run, make this bubble obsolete to a level that the value of your currency would go higher than the Bitcoin, and then you could actually practically bring this system into a legitimized trading platform of your own, where you know that even investors like me who would want to add $1 or 10 or 20 into your system to benefit people and also get some sort of a practical return, my rate of return would go sky high, because the value of what I put in as $1 would turn into $100 in no time. And I would let go of my interest. I would say I don't want any interest because it's a noble cause. But since my currency is now being multiplied and it's practically existing in the shape of an equity, I would rather be a partner in the equity of either the assets that you're building or the currency that you're trading of Jala. So I would get rid of this bubble of cryptocurrency and be in a practical blockchain of yours, where not only I'm benefiting people and getting prayers from them and probably a better afterlife, but also the assets that I'm putting money into are multiplying in thousands in a matter of moments. So I would suggest that that the earlier you get into a currency of your own instead of that, and probably even make the banking system of the globe obsolete in a matter of 5 to 10 years, I would say.
I know Will's looking to eagerly come in.
I'd just like to maybe remind everyone why we're doing this. We're not interested in creating a financial system for the sake of creating a financial system and benefiting on a false economy. We're here to allow people in poverty access to funds that they normally generate themselves in a meaningful and safe way so that they can have housing. And I think if we lose focus and suddenly you think that we're some Bitcoin competitor, then we're going to lose our plot. And I think it also would lead to usury practice, which we're not interested in, which would make the whole system too expensive. And as Mushin explained at the outset, which is where the costs associated with running the platform would then exceed the ability of the people we're trying to help. And so I think that, that's very broadly, and I'm not saying that there'd never be a Jala coin, but it'd have to be very well thought out. It'll have to be but we're not doing that at the moment. We're just creating an accounting system that allows people in poverty to access funds. And that's it. So it's very real. And as you pointed out, this is not what Bitcoin does. We're just creating real things. It's real economy. And we're doing it by helping people who couldn't possibly access funds previously do it. Now, just because they can't go to a bank doesn't mean they don't have an economy. And this is the astounding thing of it. The turnover in the informal economy is significant. And it's significant enough, as Mushin and I discovered. And this was kind of the most fun part of it, where we were talking to people in groups. We were filling basketball courts, not stadiums, but basketball courts with people in poverty asking us about what we were doing. And we're asking them in interesting ways, how much money did they have available? Until we could prove to ourselves, really, that there was enough money in their small economies over 30 to 35 years to buy a house. And it wouldn't put them under duress. And of course, then the implication of them being able to pay back a non-usury loan over a lifetime means that they have, as a family, an asset that they can pass on. And they don't have to pay rent anymore, and they're living appropriately in the entire time. And so I just drive it all back to, yes, Bitcoin and all these things are exciting, but they're not as real as helping people get their own home.
Yeah.
And so if we keep it that simple, that it's then I think it's very hard to trip up or to get used in the process. I don't know, Mushin, what do you think? Am I talking some sense here?
Well, no, I think what you're pointing out is we shouldn't lose focus. Now, it's easy to lose focus in the sense that um, you know realizing what we're really doing, and which I think it really gets excited after a while, after you really start to think about it. I mean, if you really think about this potential, it's freaking amazing. Because just imagine there's like let's say 1 million poor people use this, and let's say they each have $100 lying around. Then you have a system that has already 100,000
100 million.
or 100 million, sorry, 100 million.
But you're sacked. I'm now in charge of finance.
Which now can there's this thing about infinite liquidity that I'm fascinated with. Centralized organs can only give you limited liquidity, but
Yes.
the decentralized system of 65% of the world is like an endless liquidity system,
Yes.
where finally all the people that are in the system profit from it. So
Can you see?
now,
Can you see how
so
truly?
this potential, and that brings me back.
Sorry, Mushin.
Yeah.
I was just going to
So
interject
this
a
is the
little bit.
potential. No, go ahead.
Yeah, this is how dangerous this is. This is incredibly threatening to people
Yes.
who trade money.
So then,
This is why Mushin is in hiding in an attic, and I've gone off planet.
you see, now, the I would like to also get to this question of investors, early investors, people who see the potential of this. And I have been thinking along the lines you are suggesting, um, creating a fund, because I mean, actually, until we attract the first billion, we're not really even touching the potential of this system, right?
Yes.
So reaching the first billion, we may take investors along, but the difficulty with floating a coin like that, I know from Holo. Holo has also called the Holo token, HOT, HOT. The Holo token has, I don't know, made something like 400% or within first year, and by now it has made like something like 10,000%. And those are kinds of, those are kind of where VCs, they get all wet, right? So they get all cheered up. They would like to participate in such a thing. And now I think that money is good. I would like to have that money and use that for the
Because it
poor,
would strengthen
right?
your cause.
Yeah.
It would
So
speed
we
up
have
things.
so I do get that, but there needs to be some protection within that system, because I've seen what the hollow fuel up and or the hot did within the hollow ecosystem,
Yes.
and it's really really demotivating if this thing goes down, which you know bitcoins and these things, they go up and down all the time, very volatile. Using that volatility is cool. I have no problem with that at all. The difficulty, and it's just a question for me, I don't have an answer to that, is I would like to get some of that speculation money. I would really like to have that, and kind of instead of it making tons and tons of money, is finding ways of getting those tons and tons of money to that informal economy. So basically, really, we have to be careful about this. because other than most people understand, I know that there is something like an aura of software. Basically, if you make it to make tons of money, that particular greed is hard coded into the system. This is what I maintain. It may be funny for people, but this is what I maintain, and this is what happens. And this is what happened with Bitcoin.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think when Will pointed out that we would lose focus, it is. I totally understand. But I took the liberty of saying that, considering that we are all under the global umbrella of a noble cause. The concept is.
Let me underscore that. So the excitement of making money for money's sake is the root of all evil. This is where it all starts to fall apart in my head. We're trying to mobilize funds to get people housed. So all the funds we mobilize will go into their appropriate housing and maybe the small business needs until such time as they don't need it anymore.
See,
and so the more money that we can accumulate into the system, the more impact we can have on people in poverty.
I totally agree.
One stokes up the other.
It's just that I believe at a certain point, Jala needs to become self-sustainable and independent of all investors. And that is because, frankly speaking, if I am one of the members of a family in a slum in Philippines or Bangladesh or Pakistan, for that matter, I would want to become independent of the loan as well. At one point, I would want no more monthly interest being drained out of my income through even Jala. And to be able to do that, I would want some sort of an equity partnership as a poor person in the community, because the motive behind your concept is to empower me and make my system, my family, self-sustainable. And to be able to do that is to, as quickly as possible, get rid of the label of interest, the concept of investors asking you for their return. So the independence of the model has to have some sort of a financial stability into it, and a financial sustainability into it.
Is a very important point that you are making, Zudi, because what we're actually asking the people in poverty is a very important question. We're saying, do you want to replace your current circumstance with an improved one?
Yeah.
And if you do, this is the quid pro quo. You must put in, say, 25% of your gross income as a family into this to make sure that happens for a lifetime, for 25 years.
Yes.
Are you prepared to do that? Serious question. And I don't think anyone said no yet. There are some people who just couldn't do it, but that's not the same. Everyone we spoke to is aspiring to improve themselves. And if you give them an avenue when they understand it and trust that it is real, they all go, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We would sacrifice that. We would work hard. We'd all put in. And so it's a trade for a better life, and people will do it. People will want to improve themselves, particularly when they see they're not being used in the process. Mushin, I was just wondering if you wanted to give a solid example based on maybe half a dozen families joining together in a group to borrow money for half a dozen homes, and how that actually works in the Jala model, because I know you'll explain that very eloquently, yeah? And it might give viewers an opportunity to just see how well that works. And once you've done that, if I might sort of drive this in a direction, Zubi, if you don't mind, that there is an application in Pakistan that is very important, and it's not like we're talking about, but Jala has other sides to it that could be very, very useful because it's non-usury, because it's unbreakable. The contracts are done in the cloud. They can never be erased or adjusted by governments or military, or they're enduring because you're doing a deal with your community, not with some bank that can get bombed or removed. If we can head in that direction afterwards, but Mushin, just this example first, I think would really clarify for people the mechanism of buying a home, for example.
Yeah.
From the
Yeah.
perspective of the borrower. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to say that I think a year ago I read more extensively about Islamic banking and how that works. And I think Jala is really kind of a flower of Islamic banking and the possibilities discovered the possibilities of Islamic banking, which was originally, I think, the real free enterprise. The only times we had real free enterprise is when we had Muslim traders do Islamic banking within themselves. But that's an aside. I just want to put that out there and just say Jala is completely Islamic banking compliant, and it even goes a little bit beyond what they do.
Yeah, actually, it sounds way better than the Islamic Bank.
Yeah, yes.
More Islamic than Islamic Bank.
So a loan functions basically. It's really basically saying we identify. So the houses we did this about was we call it vertical village, and that is Will's concept is really kind of around human-centered, human group-centered, community-centered architecture. So it's called a vertical village because really it incorporates a village. So we use that system. So basically, what we do is we get between 7 and 20 people together in a group, um, and that's the Yunus principle. Basically, they say, okay, we vouch for each other that all of us together we're going to make sure that we all pay. So it's a we pay you kind of thing, or we pay us, the larger community kind of thing. Um, so basically, so let's say it's 10 people, makes things always easy. So it's 10 people, and then on top of their monthly um, installment, um, they put a percentage in a kind of as a mutual insurance fund for that particular. So if after a year someone misses payment of 2 or 3 months or something, it can be paid from the fund. Afterwards, the community needs to get together to discuss this. What are we going to do? Because so and so cannot pay anymore. Are we going to put all of this together, or are we going to look for a new person to join this particular group? And it would be a kind of, ideally, it's always a kind of group that will live in each other's neighborhood. So, you live together with the 20 heads of the household that or the 10 that you made a loan with together on one floor. So, you know of each other's circumstances and so on. So this is how it works. We put together a group of people, or we say, okay, self-select yourself into a group which will live next to each other and which will take care in the group that we all pay back. Now, and then the third element is really Will and I figured out what would be around about the maximum thing people can pay per month, and because the average income is, or in the slums, is round about 5 to 7 thousand pesos in
Yeah.
per, which is round about 100 euros. So you need to go to 25 euro basically, but it can be much more. So this is why we give money to groups. So um, of self-governing groups. You can regard these groups also as cells within the eco credit system, because basically what these people are providing is the value of the asset. So, in Islamic banking, you cannot pay interest, but you can get the rent of an apartment building, for instance. So, you're building an asset in that sense, and that is what is happening in Jala if we do housing or microfinance or any of those systems. That is how it works. So it's always groups. I think, the level I talked about, the reputation level I talked about earlier, that will be round about 100, on the first level, around about 100 euro of credit, right? But that means like 10 people with 100 euro can get together and then they have 1,000 euro, right? So, and they can say, well, we have that money. And this is the elegance of infinite liquidity is like, say, I have a thousand Jala accounting units on I can say, okay, I can, it doesn't need to lie around in my wallet. You can get automated loans. I will only lend to people under these circumstances. You say what the rules are, and then the community loans to the community. So you have these loans that are internally that upgrade the economy because if we see this system as just doing housing loans, it's not sustainable. It is extremely slow. Let's put it like that. It's sustainable, but extremely slow. So basically, that's how. If you buy your bakery stuff in the house, why not use the coin you're using anyway to pay your rent, right? So, and this is how people can easily wrap their head around it. So now you have the baker and you have your sari store or your little kiosk and so on. So you build up the economy alongside with people making payment for houses. This is kind of how these ideas and how we developed this product by actually looking at the actual situation of the people. So we do the loan. So that also gives us. So we don't give loans to individuals beyond these levels that I just mentioned, um, but only to groups. Housing loans only to groups, or if you say an oven, only to the baker group, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always community to community, and this aspect, I'm kind of using that aspect because social control is never ever used in a system of financials. What they use is like credit ratings and all of those things. This is what is being used.
Punishment.
And,
Mm.
yeah, and we're using basically good social behavior that we want to enhance anyway, and we're piggybacking on especially, I mean, in Africa, Southeast Asia, we're piggybacking on the community spirit that is much more alive there than it is in the West, basically.
Look,
Yeah.
Mushin, you gave an example to me right at the outset about how this might work in a practical sense, where let's just say Will, Raza, Zubi, and Mushin are all in the same community. We're all borrowing as a group for, an oven for the bakery, yeah. And so this Jala application lives on our mobile phones. And what I always found interesting is that people in abject poverty all seem to have plasma TVs and a 4G telephone. I don't know how that happens, but they all do. They're all well connected, which proves there is an economy, obviously, as well. They might live in a box, but there's a TV on the wall. So on the app on their phone, you can make a payment, and just say I failed to make a payment. Then the group gets a text message from Jala. It's just AI. It's just artificial intelligence saying, hello, we've received, thank you for the payment of X towards the oven. But we've noticed that Will hasn't paid in. Could you please explain, is he okay? Is he unwell and unable to pay, or is he slow, or did he forget? What would you like us to do? And then you'd respond, you'd have an A, B, C, or D. And then because we're all kicking in maybe 5% more than we need to satisfy the loan on a monthly basis, we're accruing a kitty that we all own, but we can't touch until the payments are complete. And so if it is like, okay, so Will broke a leg and he can't bicycle to work, and so for the time being he has to pass, then the algorithm would just text everyone in the group back saying, that's okay, we'll just take his money out of the joint account, and if that's okay with everyone, and then let us know if he wants to catch up later or leave it as it is, and eventually come back. That'll be fine. So no harm, no pressure, no duress. It's like we set it up for just this sort of circumstance, and it's going to work. And then at the end of the day, we've all paid off the oven, and the algorithms remembered this Will Marcus guy. He didn't pay for 3 months. So when the remainder of that kitty, that security, is handed back to the four of us, well, I didn't put as much in, so it comes off what I would get. I wouldn't get a quarter. I'd get a quarter less what I failed to pay, and nominally some interest, cost 5% per annum. So, and even at the end of it, when I really love this bit, Mushin. The algorithm will say that money that you've been putting in excess as security, it's now amounted to this amount. What do you want to do with that? We can equitably pay everyone out again in cash or credit, or we can roll that into another loan for your children. And because you've been so good, their interest rate will be 5% and not 6%, or that'll be recognised because it was a proven system. Or there are options, or a bit of both. So the algorithm is harmless, and I mean that in the true sense of the word. It's not there to punish you if you don't pay, and then if I finally send the bailiff around to put you in jail. It's there to assist people who are deeply honest. Generally, that's the assumption. And if they fail, well, obviously their credit rating doesn't look so good in Jala, and next time round it's not so easy for them. But don't forget, there's the pressure of the, like I'm sure Raza and Zubi and Mushin, you're going to be onto me for not paying and being, slack about this, unless I've got a broken leg, obviously. And so your community then disenfranchises you from the system. So the pressure of your peers is the main security that the system has. Notwithstanding, there's an asset underpinning all of this, which remains with Jala until the final payout. And there are a couple of reasons for doing that. So the asset is underwriting the whole thing. It's about right.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one last thing to ask. See, whenever we talk about these...
Sorry, Zubi. Carry on, mate. I'm just teasing.
Because whenever we talk about these projects, I'm forced and compelled to think about people around me in our country, and I don't know if it's natural or if I'm just a bit too patriotic. I don't know, but it is how it is.
That's natural.
And I guess charity begins at home. That's why I probably think about my hometown or my homeland before anything else, and not take away anything from other countries which need these sort of projects more than Pakistan in general does. But see, we have a variety of of underprivileged communities. And at the Grey Lounge, at the platform that we have established so far, we have people working on various projects, and all those projects are charity-based projects to uplift communities of various types and various categories. For instance, we have two project heads. One of them is probably also a part of this conversation right now through our Zoom session. She's a young girl. Her name is Hiba Javed, and she has come up with the concept of helping two such communities. One is orphans, and the other part is the transgenders, because the transgender community in Pakistan is probably one of the most suffered and most underplayed and undermined communities of Pakistan, because of multiple reasons. We no need to get into the details, because the details are as ugly as the details that you mentioned earlier about the people in Payaras. So there are various activities that go on with those transgenders. And we were working on certain projects earlier also, when this young girl, she's probably in her early 20s, 22, 23, but she's a social entrepreneur as by birth, I would say, because at this age, when you come up with the concept of helping transgenders or orphans, it means you were probably born a social entrepreneur of some sort. So what happened when she mentioned her project, we have project heads meetings where everybody comes up with a presentation of a project which is based on charity. It has to have a noble aspect to it. It has to have beneficiaries below the poverty line, and it has to have these sort of social elements to it. Otherwise, it does not even qualify within our meetings as a project. So we work this way. Now, when she mentioned the project, I told her that we have already, the Grey Lounge is already working on a project for helping these transgenders in Pakistan, and not just Pakistan. Gradually, also slowly, we would expand to the world, because I seem to have traveled many countries in my life, and I've seen this particular aspect of a human everywhere, because they are the most underprivileged in all parts of the world, and they are the most suffered in all parts of the world, the way I see it, because of various reasons, culturally different and sociologically different. Okay, I understand that, but still they suffer. So we were thinking about a project when she also came up with one, that what we were trying to do was because they are a huge community in Pakistan, and they are registered, they've got their own system networks, they've got political issues within themselves also, because where there's a human, there's a political rift going on. So there are issues that could be probably later addressed, but they work as a community all over the country. They get charity donations and all sorts of other social entrepreneurs helping them out, but they work as a community independently, and they do very huge things within themselves, which even the government of Pakistan fails to do at times, but within their own scope. So when I look at these projects that you mentioned, I am compelled to think about these communities, and I am, in my mind, while you're discussing, I'm trying to fit this thing somewhere in the community and see what's possible for them or not, and how we can do. And what I noticed is that when we talk about Jala becomes an independent global welfare state, where it could have citizens, unmarked citizens, from Pakistan, from Philippines, from the US, from Africa, from wherever, all the homeless and whatever underprivileged people that you can think of, could become a citizen of a global welfare state, because that was the name of the project that we came up with for our transgenders, that we would give them global citizenship. And gradually, in the long run, we would take them on an international passport of a global citizenship, where they could be interacting with each other globally, and have smaller communities, societies, towns, and cities even established for them in the longer run. So maybe Jala could actually, I see Jala as some welfare state where we can think of orphans, we could think of transgenders, and any community that could be suffering in any possible way.
So I think the terminology is not quite right. Jala will never be a welfare state. It's a platform to allow people who don't have access to banking facilities to finance, to get finance. We're never going to give people money. They have to pay it back. I understand. It's not welfare. I'm not talking about
liquid cash. You are giving them a welfare, the concept of better lifestyle.
You know what they say, it's not a handout, it's a hand up.
Yes, I totally agree.
So
and I think
the word welfare is not sort of resonating with me, Zubi. I understand your sentiment, but we can allow people, allow access to all of these people to help themselves out, because the intention at the end of the day is to eliminate poverty.
Exactly. But that's the whole concept of a welfare state. That there should be no poverty, and there should be no, these sort of aspects a welfare state should principally cover. That the citizens of the welfare state should not be below the poverty line.
That's a really interesting aspect, because in all countries there are people who cannot help themselves, and we've had a bit of a discussion about this, whether they're fully disabled, or physically or mentally, or
financially.
Financially, if they're not physically or mentally disabled, then the Jala will help them out.
Yes.
But Jala can't help people who are unable to help themselves, and therefore welfare. We're not going to become the welfare state, though that's a possibility. There could be an arm of Jala that becomes a welfare system, that we could commit a percentage of everything back to helping that, maybe the 4% of any population that is unemployable or incapable of helping themselves out of trouble. That's put that aside. The intention is to build their families so strong that the families can look after these people. It's not a perfect system, but I think it's an approach, and maybe it's got a few prongs to it. This whole welfare issue, because if we solve the poverty aspect first, then we can come back and deal with the welfare issues with intransigent socio-economic problems, and that could be done through welfare.
About the long run,
as a straight gifting thing. If Jala works out to be that successful, then it can say, okay, we're going to just take a peel for these people and look after them as well. So then truly we are acting like a government. But do we want to become government?
Never forget, it's a decentralized system. It's a decentralized system, so we can't even become a government. In the sense, so if you understand decentralized system, basically what it would allow to the transgender people all over the world is to actually make it verifiable. So it's take the transgender as a persecuted minority in about, I think, about 150 countries of the world's 200, and that's probably optimistic, but so they can help themselves. You see, so the tool is basically a tool to help themselves. We don't want to lift the poor up. We want to give them a tool that they will use to lift themselves up.
That is
the system is called the system. So I think if we rethink welfare system within the decentralized nexus, it comes closer to the people. Right now, I'm getting my pension because I'm over 65. I'm getting a pension from the German state, right? And that's more, it's not a handout because I have paid into that system all my life,
You've been paying taxes.
So I'm being paid back, but the system is really, really, really sucks. But it's better than no system, right? So, for me, I mean, I'm happy about it because, it gives me half of my income that I need per month. And I don't need to do anything. So, but rethinking welfare systems from a decentralized point of view makes it a community system again. So we're just seeing network. So this is what Jala provides is a network of networked individuals who are using an accountability system, so the transgender people can go, yeah, okay, so we make it possible for the elder transgender people who have been struggling all of their life to have a great way to live life the last 20 years of their life. And we as a community take care of that. And then there's tons of ways in which that can be done. But
See,
a welfare state should be one where the people create the welfare that then they share among each other. Yeah.
see, the thing is, you mentioned that Jala does not work directly with the beneficiaries. It works with the community structure. So, and the community then disperses whatever activities that it has in turn to the beneficiaries. Now, the community, so to speak, does not practically exist when we talk about transgenders. It's more of people scattered but gathered under some sort of a flag, some sort of a name, an organization established by themselves, and a very shabby outfit also at times, where they have some furniture also where they sit down and have meetings of some sort. But this community, once somehow entwined with your system, starts to deliver projects such as the vertical villages, such as the food cube concept, or any other welfare project that you have for people. What it would do is that this community would in turn be providing welfare by means of a mechanism established, just like the German government has established, or the Scandinavian countries have established somehow, that they have a network where they know how to make people work for themselves to earn the welfare that they demand in return from the government. That is understandable. That is something, a task upon the community itself that is supposed to handle. But Jala would give them the meat on the bone when they want to do that, when they intend to uplift the community itself, the beneficiaries itself, and make them sustainably independent. So I'm just looking at 10 years or 20 years from now, that how Jala can actually develop communities within the globe and establish a macro level arm of the Lord, somehow helping people to lift them out of their conditions and make them independent. Just like I mentioned earlier, that Jala should itself become independent at one time, even of investors or other currencies for that matter, so that the independence starts from the leader side, from Jala side, and is transferred. Because let's say I am the end point beneficiary of your concept, then I would say Jala itself is not independent. How can they promise independence to me? Because they are dependent on some sort of an investment coming in on the basis of some sort of a business plan that they throw to investors, that this is what we will do, and this is how the interest that would come, and this is how your stagnant currency or your investment would have some sort of a nominal return every year annually. So the independence from the leader side would come down to the follower side by means of all aspects, be it financial, be it infrastructure wise, or be it a welfare structure system, or these sort of society aspects. Just like you mentioned Islamic banking, it means it is already favorable in countries where there are stigmas attached by means of religion or however, or cultural. So you are covering all aspects already. So I'm just loudly thinking that maybe 10 years ahead you could have an eternally purified system of some sort of a divine intervention coming up
That would
because
be
of the
cool.
nobleness of the cause that you have.
If we can eliminate poverty by doing that, I'm totally for it. So, I mean, it's really funny, you know. I think we're coming to the end, but you know, I really think it's funny that you know, we're looking at a a a globe which really offers a huge opportunity, and why is it not taken? So, you know, so
Sure.
basically, I think that I think we're moving towards a time where the profit motive isn't as strong anymore. I mean, I see it among young people in Germany. They're not so much interested in making top bucks and driving the hottest sports car for the men, or you know, wearing Prada all the time for the women. So you know, we're moving towards a time that is already thinking about decentralized communities. You know, where the transgender community is a decentralized community. It's all over the globe, but it can come together using this tool. And basically, this is what we would provide. Basically, it's a tool, and we're in the early stages of testing it. So, you know, we need to kick out the jams here and there and everywhere. Um, but I have got one of the greatest developer teams of all times, I would say, I would wager, because this is how we work, right? We just, you know, float ideas, and nobody's saying, okay, it needs to go to this central place, you know. So,
We have a question from one of our attendants also here in the Zoom session, and I would want to take that question because it's interesting. They say, what would be the definition of a poor person in the dictionary of Jala?
a poor person is someone whose existence horizon is something like 3 days. Basically, meaning I know for the next 3 days I can survive. I don't know anything more. This is what I know. So I would. This is what is poor. This is very poor, and then poor would be, from my point of view, if uh, if 80% of your money goes to food, then you're poor. So I'm not taking absolute numbers here. I'm taking relative numbers relative to the people. And having lived in poverty myself in my young years, I uh, I kind of have a felt point of view there more rather than a statistical and definition point of view. So as with all things in a decentralized universe, you don't have one dictionary. You have like a hundred, right? So, you know, whatever people think of as being poor, that's what it probably is.
Okay, okay. That question came from one of our Grey Lounge members. His name is Hisham Akhtar. He's also one of our project heads. So I hope he's got the question addressed. And Raza bhai, I would
No,
want to
no,
add.
very interesting. I'm still getting my head around partnering with the loan sharks. I'm still adjusting myself to that concept that you proposed. No, I think it was very interesting. We've obviously once again extended over our allotted time, which we need to curtail, and I know the guys have given valuable time again. To thank them for that. We would like to maybe in the next session, if we can, address our project in Pakistan a little bit more, or bring that into focus and share some of the ideas that we're working on, how we can maybe start cultivating those ideas into implementation, really. So really closing off from my side, I think, once again, thank you, Mushin, thank you, Will, for your valuable insights. And very fascinating. I could sit here and listen to you guys all day long.
Thank you
It is so
very
true.
much.
It is
Yeah.
so true. It is. It is. I think I can safely say that I try to look at various programs all over the internet most of the day, so that I could actually find something meaningful out of my 24 hours of the day. And but these 2-3 hours that we've spent, I can safely say that these were the most meaningful few hours that I have spent in years, because of the beauty of the concept of what you two gentlemen have brought to the system, to the world, inshallah, by the will of the Lord, very soon practically implemented all over the world. I would pray for that. And I thank you, gentlemen, on behalf of the Grey Lounge and Raza Bhai, of course. I thank you both for your time. And yes, in our next session, if we could also focus on mainly on the projects that you have in your plan, in the kitty, in your bag of goods for Pakistanis, the people that are the beneficiaries who direly await for miracles to happen. To be honest, in countries like Pakistan, it is no less than a miracle if such a project lands for these people in Pakistan. And in the current age, thinking about these projects for bringing people out of their misery is the thought itself is as noble as it gets. And I salute you, gentlemen, and the people behind you and the people with you in your teams that have put endless efforts to make these concepts visibly possible on paper and practically possible on the ground. I thank you, gentlemen. I thank you, Raza Bhai, for your time, and it is no less than an honor to be a part of these conversations, and whatever I can do to make these sort of projects practically occur in Pakistan or other countries, I'm available at your dispense. I thank you, gentlemen, one more time.
Thank you very much.
Zubi, thank you. I really enjoy these discussions, I must say, and appreciate your support. I know, Raza and Zubi, that your backgrounds and how you want to work this, we greatly appreciate that. We're ready at your service whenever that will be, I can assure you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
And until next Tuesday, we bid farewell for now. And it also gives me a lot of food for thought. And I would probably try to bring some sort of a questionnaire for the next session, so that and from our team members also, they keep throwing questions at me. We did not find time to bring those questions this time around, but next time, next program, we would have a 20-minute, 30-minute section where we could talk about we address the questions that people have sent across to us by names, and so that when they get to see the program, they would get the answers to their questions.
Great. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the week, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.